on her presentation. Sharon Bayes is founder, president, and CEO of Innovative Alternatives, a nonprofit agency with the mission of finding solutions to life's most difficult people problems through mediation, counseling, and training since 1989. Innovative
You
Alternatives.
don't have to go through all of that, Julie. Just
all right. Awesome. Well, she's got two children, a husband of 42 years, and we're very excited to hear her advice and expertise today. Thank you, Sharon.
Great. Thanks. I run and I'm the founder of Innovative Alternatives. We have been in the community for 32 years, going on 32 years. I count the year that I worked on it before we incorporated, so it's a year longer than the date. But we do a variety of mental health and relational health, which is important to your business. If you ever want to visit with us on how to create a positive work culture, I've done that presentation for the chamber. I think it's been a couple years now. Please give me a call on that. It's when our employees leave us for higher pay someplace else or something like that, they say the thing that they hate leaving the most, sorry about the gravelly voice that just started, is the work culture. And so you can maintain employees a lot longer if you have a good place to work. It's very rare, and and I think that that's something that most of us don't pay as much attention to when we're managing as we do just putting out fires. So you can be a lot more proactive on that end if you'd like, and we can help you with that. But just jumping in, our agencies, since we do counseling, we do mediation, and we do a lot of training, we're doing almost everything virtually right now. And our clients have surprisingly adapted very, very well. In fact, when COVID first hit, we had 53% cancellations. We had a drop of 85% in new intakes, new client intakes, because people were afraid to expose themselves and come into any place. And so what we started doing immediately is having all of our counselors call all of their current clients, and then after they called their current clients to inform them of the telehealth availability and give them a little coaching on telehealth, is to call all their past clients for the last year and a half in order to let them know about telehealth in case they were having hard times going through the COVID pandemic or concerns for relatives. After a while, we start getting on each other's nerves in the house, and there's family conflict and things like that going on. We can offer our Building Better Relationships classes online for families. And so if you would like to have any kind of an in-service for your staff, just to keep them, appraised of things to watch for or in themselves and in their family members, just give us a call and check out what's offered, and we can try to do something specific. If you have a staff meeting, a little presentation for you on self-care and that kind of thing, if you have any concerns for your staff. And I'm going to get into that at the end of the presentation. The other thing that we have done is, because we could not do our sessions, of course, our play therapy sessions with the children who needed to actually tell us what's going on with them through their play. And so some of the things that I mentioned to you guys in the beginning about posting what you're doing, we have that posted on our website, of course, what we're doing for our clients' safety. We're staggering our therapists so they each have a half day a week, and they're the only therapist there during that half day to see the children that are coming in. That makes the effect of that is that there's only one client or client family in the waiting room at a time. But we're finding children, even say age 8 and up, are able to do telehealth. And I have a granddaughter who's 8 years old, and she can sit and talk to you for hours on end. There's no problem with that. It's not ideal for children to do their mental health that way, because they do unconsciously show you more things through play than they may tell you. but it is a stopgap measure for them during the pandemic and keeps them safer. So we're doing that with anyone we can. And the teenagers love it. They attend better through telehealth than they do when they have to come in person. So we know a lot of our clients will want to continue that. And we're finding that's going to be a way we can actually expand our business too. When this is over, is by giving each of our therapists at least one telehealth day per week. It'll give us more office space. We've been a little bit limited by office space. So in some ways, we're discovering it has forced agencies. We had 3 of our therapists on telehealth, and others that were resistant to it because of their age or whatever, and they just weren't technologically as savvy as others, and they were afraid. And so now that they've had to do it, they like it a lot. So we're finding it's creating opportunities for a lot of business. So I'm going to share my screen and go through the presentation with you guys. And let's see. I always forget I have to click the share also. Okay, so this is our website. It's just my first initial, last name. If you would like to get a copy of the presentation, I'm happy to send it to you. If you'll just send me an email, or I can send it to Julia and get it out to everyone, whatever's easier. We are also, I forgot to mention this, we're also able to do our mediation online. And we do a lot more than divorce mediation, which is what most people are familiar with. We do family reconciliation and intervention mediation. So families that are struggling because of the financial stress and everything, we're able to even continue to help them in mediation. And I actually have done some mediations with people in Iraq and a spouse here when the war was going on and that type of thing. So the first thing I want to go over, and I think it covers most of the questions I didn't answer prior to, is just how to get people back to work. You're planning on phasing your business back in, your personnel policies during COVID-19 you need to pay attention to. I'm surprised because I didn't think there would be as many questions on the safety issues, and because that's been drilled in on television so much that I thought we were all tired of hearing about distancing and all. But when it comes to each of our practices or businesses, we all have separate, how do we do that kind of questions. And so I'm glad that I asked that, because I will spend more time on that. I was gonna maybe skim over some of that a little bit, afraid that y'all were already tired of hearing about it. So I'm glad you're not. HR pitfalls and protections that you need to put in place, because you may, it's going to be a fine line on some of our employees who may not want to come back to work, and how to get them back to work, and what your rights are as an employer and their rights are as employees. Making sure, how many of, did a lot of you get PPP loans? If you can just nod, I can't see everyone, but I can see several of you. Good. So a lot of us have those. We were able to get one also. How to make sure that that's forgivable, and some of the new guidance on that. The psychology of the workplace. For you as the business owner, protecting your individual employees and your workplace culture. So those are the things that I plan to cover. I'm pretty flexible if we have time, and getting some of these other questions, putting a little more emphasis on it. I do want to give some credit. Some of the information I'm going to share with you today came from Resourcing Edge, which is our PEO. We've been with them for about 12 or more years. I can't remember exactly when. They had a different company name. And they've been sharing some really good information on employees that may refuse to come back to work, and what we need to do with them. So I'm going to share that. I sent them an email yesterday to ask if I could share some of the information they sent out to their clients. I don't want to share it without permission, but if they give permission, I'll send that to Julia to get out to you guys as well. And then the small business, the SBA, of course, and then some of the information I'm going to share with you too is about suicide prevention and that kind of thing. So several of our employees over the years have put that in place. So I wanted to give credit for that. So your employees are exposed to a lot of stress right now, even at home. A lot of times we think, oh, it's been kind of a vacation for folks, but it actually, any change, even positive change, creates stress. So if you've ever taken a stress test, I took one in graduate school and I found out I was actually dead because of the stress. I was raising children, going through internships, we were buying a home. So even buying a new home, which you would think would be very exciting, it raises your stress. You get several points for buying a new home. So even though those are positive things and we are getting to spend time with family, any change is stressful. A lot of them have job loss or their hours cut, lack of childcare. They're worried if they are invited back to work, they can't go back to work. They're trying to work at home when their kids are screaming in the background. They have financial worries. Their elders may be in assisted living. My mother-in-law is in assisted living. There are 8 COVID cases where she's at. We cannot visit her. They are not allowed to go to the window to even wave at relatives. So she cannot leave her room. It's like she's in isolation right now and has been for months. And so I had a therapist whose grandmother died and she partially raised her. She was not allowed to be with her when she passed away. And so those kinds of things are tremendously stressful on employees. Ambiguity, I find, is one of the things that human beings just do not live with well. I think helplessness is the worst emotion for us to cope with, but ambiguity and not knowing which way to turn or not knowing what to do or what's going to happen in the future is probably number 2. For prolonged periods of time. We're better off if we make a decision which way to go, even if it's the wrong decision. At least we feel we have a direction. When we don't know what to do, it's very, very stressful. So that's something that impacts business owners. Of course, your own health concerns, that of your family, the isolation, the quarantine, and then watching our country burn right now. We're all watching our country burn on television every night, and the looting and the threats of that coming to the suburbs. That's a new stress that's being added to this pandemic stress. And I know for my mom, she is really having anxiety attacks over that. Just sitting and all that's on television, the news keeps popping in about different places burning. And so she's very, very upset with that. And we can't discount what we are exposed to there. So to get people back to work, a lot of people are avoiding going back to work because they're making more money on unemployment than they make in their regular positions. And that creates a really big hurdle for us. What do we do to get them over that hump? And we have to get them thinking long term. And you want to do this, you want to write these kinds of things if you're communicating by email, if you're having your video chats. You want to appeal based on the mission of the company, everyone working together to get the company back up, all of us doing our part on that. Let people see your need for them and the company's need for them, your clients. If they're really dedicated to their jobs, then those things mean a lot. The meaning of work is as important as pay. And yet you have to be very careful that you're not coercing, and you're not coercing individuals, some individuals and not others, because you can be accused of discrimination. If you're trying to coax one person back and another person hears, hey, I wasn't invited back, or I didn't know there were any openings coming back in the business right now, then you are going to open yourself up for some discrimination filings. So you want to be very careful that you're communicating to everyone at the same time on some of this. I tell you, touching my face is going to be something. I never break that habit. I'm just cutting my hair. For one thing, I have a fan over me blowing my little hairs, tickling me. But I've realized what a bad habit that is for me. And then just making sure that even though you may know people have some medical risks and they may not want to come back to work, I'm going to repeat this over and over in this, that you don't make that decision for them. You may know that they're diabetic and it's not a good idea, and they may be a good, a person who's confided in you as their supervisor for years, but you cannot make decisions for people that they need to be the one to stay at home and work, or you can't offer that position to them because they have that condition. Again, the discrimination is a big thing. Others, of course, don't want to come back, and that's one thing that a lot of I have a lot of therapists that are in their 60s and are very seasoned. We had a client call and ask for a weathered therapist one time. We all went, no, you take her. No, you take her. I don't want her. We're okay being called seasoned, but we don't want to be called weathered. This makes a wrinkly driftwood image come to mind. But we do have a lot of people in that age group, and they're very concerned about coming back, and they've been thanking us a lot for allowing the telehealth and letting them have the option of that continuing. So you need to be doing a lot of communication with your employees. I think Peggy was the one that mentioned that, about what it is you are doing to keep them safe and what practices you're going to put in place. You want to do some training on the proper use of PPE. You see people all the time wearing a mask and it's below their nose, and that may prevent the spittle from that while you talk, but it doesn't prevent you from breathing in germs from other people, and that's an improper use of the mask. And so you want to do a little bit of training with people as they come back to work. Have your HR department or their supervisors trained in order to instruct them on that. And also, what is the, how are they going to socially distance with their clients? What are the touching guidelines that you're putting in place? And it is recommended that we do as little touching with our clients as possible. Now, I saw my first in-person client. I still keep a couple of clients here and there. And I did my first in-person appointment last week, and I still am patting people in the middle of the back. If it's typical that we have hugged in the past, now I don't touch people that have not been, I don't know, are not, if they're comfortable touching or not. But I think you touch people in the middle of the back, that's a place on their clothing. They've been unlikely to touch themselves to get any germs on their clothing, and people appreciate, and it's a psychological comfort to be touched for most people. Now, we serve a lot of sexual abuse victims. There are a lot of people out there uncomfortable, and you have to just, you definitely have to watch that at all times, not just during pandemic if someone cringes a little bit away from touch. But you're going to have to kind of see how you handle that in the business and what practices you want to have, and then make sure that you as the leader don't, or a leader in your business, don't break those guidelines. We don't have any particular, we've asked people to be cautious and to go case by case like that, like I just described it, because we are mental health and because we are, in many cases, seeing children. We may, we do wear gloves with children so that we're not spreading any germs, and we're spraying down every toy that they touch in the play therapy room after each child with disinfectant. But back to, if they still refuse to come to work, usually an employee doesn't have the right to refuse to report to work just because there's a potential risk to them. OSHA gives them rights if there are real risks. And so, of course, anyone who falls in the high risk category can claim that they need to work, if it's possible for them to do their jobs, work remotely. But if there's someone that you have to have in the in the office. Like our intake people have continued coming into the office. We have to have someone answering the phone. We have to have someone to greet those clients and check them in. And so our intake folks have come in to the office. What we've done is we've had them in pairs. We have 5 intake people. And so we've had them work in pairs. So they're always working with the same person, and we have less chance of one of them, if they happen to catch something, infecting everyone at the office and are having to close down or quarantine everyone because our intake is sick. But they usually cannot refuse just because there's a potential for illness, especially if you've done everything to mitigate the risk that is within your power to do as an employer. If you communicate with them what you're doing to keep them safe and to keep them from catching the COVID, then and you've showed that to them and you train them in that PPE and the appropriate steps, then you can expect to require them to come back to work. The employee, on their part, they have to demonstrate they fall into one of those categories under COVID that is a risk category. It's either that they have a pre-existing condition, they're in that age group of 60 and above, they may have care of a child that doesn't have school, and that's going to be a lot of people, or they're caring for someone else that's been exposed, or any of them in their family have been exposed to COVID and they're quarantined, or they have a doctor's order for quarantine. As an employer, if they claim, let's say they're in their 40s, they're not in the 60s, and and you don't have a right as an employer to know what their medical issues are. In fact, medical issues need to be kept. Personnel law requires you to keep their medical, like if they have on their emergency form, you need to keep all of those things separate from their normal personnel file, because even I as CEO don't have a right to know which of my employees are diabetic, which have high blood pressure, none of that. That's absolutely confidential, and only your HR department, if you have one, is supposed to know that. If you don't have an HR department, you need to have a designated person that keeps those and keeps them separate from their personnel files. But you can require that they bring a medical certification of what their restrictions are, and only require that the certification from the doctor says that what they can and cannot do. You can't require that they say, I'm diabetic and I can't be exposed. You can't ask them to know what the condition is. Does that make sense? Only what they can and cannot do.
Sharon, real quick, time is flying on this one. If we can wrap up in a couple minutes just to let people that need off at 11 off, and then do you have a couple minutes to stay on this after people have questions?
Yeah, and I'll definitely have to send this out because there's a lot of information for you guys. Yeah, I'll just finish this one up. And then after, if they still refuse and they don't have the certification, you can employ your job abandonment policies. If you don't have any of those for people no show and no call to work, you need to put them in place during this in case you have people who don't want to report back to work. So that finishes that slide. You said leave time for questions now?
I guess, let's see, it's 10:57. Jenny, you want to hop in real quick and give chamber announcements? And then for those of you that are able to give a few more minutes, we'll continue. I know today's presentation kind of flew by. 11 o'clock snuck up on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I don't have anything that's too much to add. We are working with SBDC, Rob over there, on a webinar series that's going to be more of a workshop. So our first one is going to be June 18th. And it's going to be focusing on sales. So that's going to be a great one. We're super excited about. Details will be coming soon to that, and that'll be a monthly recurring. I want to make sure everybody goes and looks on Facebook. We are doing a People's Choice Summer Drink Contest. We kicked it off at our business after hours. So you guys check it out. just a fun thing we wanted to share with everyone, promote some of our restaurateur members, and give you guys good ideas on where to go get a couple drinks. But I don't have anything else super pressing from the chamber side. We are working on some more webinars for you guys. If you have ideas or things you're interested in, especially softwares, things like that, let us know, shoot it over on the chats. We're looking for someone to teach at Microsoft Teams. But if there's other things that you're interested in that want to explore deeper, do a deep dive on that, let us know. But other than that, Julia, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. All right. For those of you that have to get off at 11, I completely understand because that was our time slate. But for those of you that can stay, I'm going to stay on, and Ms. Sharon has a little time to continue. So we will definitely make sure we get this presentation out to you guys. And Sharon, I will just let you pick back up. Thank you.
So is there anyone who's not heard of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act? It is something that requires all of us to give, and this lasts through December 31st of 2020. We're required to give an extra 2 weeks of paid time off to any employee that falls under any of the criteria for that. I can send those criteria out when I send the presentation, but it's any of those things that I just listed. They either in a high risk group, they've been exposed and they're quarantined, they have a doctor's excuse, or they're caring for a child that doesn't have daycare because the daycare is closed. Any of that. And so that can be a great expense. And that's one of the reasons I think they gave 2.5 months on the paycheck protection loans was to help cover those. And we're only turning in as forgivable 2 months worth of information. So you need to decide, you need to sit down and make a plan on which portions of your business will resume. I mean, even though the governor gave us permission to open our businesses, most people are not opening, just, doors flying open to do the exact same thing they were doing before. People are taking precautions. You want to show your customers that you're taking precautions. And so you need to decide on some phases for your business and how to get back into the swing. Decide which project needs and transition periods you want toward your full opening. And we talked a little bit with the marketing folks. I'm sure because your normal practice is to visit in person, you're feeling very anxious to get back out. I heard that from everyone, to have those in-person meetings. And yet you can take off some of that psychological pressure on yourself if you decide that one of your phases is to continue the video conferencing for another month or two, whatever your employer will. And I think everyone who would sit down and make a plan and turn into their employer will be shown to be someone taking a lot of initiative and keep the employer from having to make a plan for every position. If you run a business, that would be a good thing to do. I've asked for that from every one of my directors. What are the phases that we can get our business back to open? And what things will remain permanent? What kinds of changes will remain permanent for us because we want to stay safe for this? On assessing your workforce, you're going to need to decide which special skills or expertise is really difficult to replace, because you're going to have to decide who you're bringing back first, and what if we're having a 25% opening, we can't all open 100%. I mean, we can with the PPP loans and while they last, but then we've got that period after that 8 weeks that it looks like this is going to be a prolonged time. So who do you need to bring back if your phase of 25% is going to last beyond your PPP loan? What portions of the workforce can continue to work from home? And you want to look at past work performance. Who do you trust working at home? Not everyone is trustworthy to work at home. There are people that we would see on their phones in the workplace. So of course they're going to do that when they're at home and not be doing their most diligence. You want to find out who has a willingness and an ability to do things outside their job description, because if we're at 25%, we can't bring everyone back, and you know, the for-profit businesses are going to have to run like we nonprofit businesses do all the time, and have people that do come back wear 3, 4, 5 hats in order to get everything done that needs to get done. So you need to find out who's willing to do that. If you have some people who say on a regular basis, that's not my job, that's not the person you want to bring back first. And yet you want to put positions out that are opening and let people respond to those, let everyone respond to those. Now you can do your selection based on your criteria, but you do still have to let everyone know about the positions you're opening up. Seniority, if you furloughed a lot of people, if you cut hours and you left people in their positions, you don't have to do that kind of thing. But of course, look at seniority at-risk populations, but again, don't make the decision for them whether they can come back or not. You need to let them tell you, I prefer to work at home, telehealth for my safety. So does that make sense to everybody, how you let them, you put it out there and let them, and you may also know that they have minor children at home. They may have mentioned the daycare is not open yet, and you already know that, and yet still that person needs to be consulted and tell you if they cannot come back, rather than you making those decisions. What you need to do is make announcements that we're trying to keep this as safe. If you fall in this group, if you don't have childcare, you please let me know that. Everyone send me an email and let me know your situation and what you're available to do. And that way you're safe on the discrimination part. Because age discrimination and gender discrimination for having the children at home, those are going to be your top potential liabilities. Remember that people can file, this is so depressing, I found this out when I was in my 40s, that age discrimination can be filed in your 40s. And so that, yeah, and a lot of people don't know that. And so it tends to be the people that are older that have the higher salaries. And so with this being, you know, with that being a high risk group, and we're being told on TV, don't bring these people back, don't expose them. But if you make that decision that you're not going to bring them back, it can look like you are trying to eliminate the highest paid positions. So that's just something to be very, very careful of. On the invitation back to work, I think we've touched on this, that if they can work from home, it's probably in your first phase of opening the best practice to let everyone work at home who can, and who's trustworthy. And then let them know what phases you are going to have. While we have PPP loans, we can do creative options. We can let them work part-time. The whole purpose of PPP was to keep them connected to their workplace. And so letting them work part-time for full-time pay, if they're and now you have to do this across the board. You can't do it for particular people and not for others. You have to do it across the board, again, because of the discrimination. But sometimes you can have them get their regular pay for a different position. So a lot of places have had to go to delivery rather than personal service in their establishment. And so if someone's willing to do delivery, who is normally a customer service person in your establishment, you may give them their same pay for doing a lesser job for that period. And you want to put out in writing that this only lasts for the period of the PPP loan, that you cannot continue it past that. But a lot of us are finding, a lot of people got those loans and they're having trouble keeping them forgivable because they don't have as many people working actively, or you cut hours prior to the loan, and then it was hard to get people back if they went on unemployment. And so a lot of places are having trouble, and they're having to get creative. Like, we don't normally pay our contract therapists for administrative time, for case management. That is considered part of the session fee that they get. And yet what we did during this PPP time to make sure that that didn't fall off, that part of our salary didn't fall off, is we paid them to do projects that were administrative in nature. And those who had dips in their caseloads jumped on that gladly to be able to keep their income level the same. So just get creative with that. Just make sure that you're doing the same thing for everyone. It's an offer to everyone simultaneously. And you make sure you tell them you can't continue it after PPP is over. Otherwise, you're obligated. It's a promise of employment and a promise of income. And I think I've covered everything on this page about letting them tell you, so we'll skip over that. So this, and I won't necessarily take the time to read all of these. You'll get this in the presentation. But I think some of the more creative things are staggering your start times, maybe changing your hours of opening. People in the public are a lot more flexible about time too, and about doing things in hours beyond 5 o'clock, and sometimes appreciate that, especially if they can do something after their kids go to bed at 6:30, like my daughter. She can actually talk. She's got 3 kids, and then if she needed to do an appointment or something like that after hours, that allows you to stagger times, stagger breaks, and schedule some hand washing breaks and things like that. Some of those were some of the more creative things that I have found people are doing. And of course, disinfecting between people and making sure they're not sharing equipment. Our intake people are assigned to a particular phone for their whole shift. Normally they can pick up any phone in the front office, but now they're assigned to a phone. Things like that, where they're not sharing things. Don't pass around sign-in lists. If you are having in-person meetings, try not to, pass something around that many hands are going to touch. Those are things to keep in mind. When they report to work, you want to ask them, have they had any symptoms? You don't want to do this sporadically. You want to have the same procedures every morning. If you're going to ask people about their health, you need to ask every person every day as soon as they come in. Don't, during the day walk up and so how you been feeling, and then you forget to ask this person, and that person feels like you're saying they have germs and stuff like that. You've got to be very careful that these are practices with all of your employees at the same time. But you can perform routine health checks if you want to have the temperature strips, if you want to conduct any testing in non-discriminatory ways, where once a week you test people for COVID. Again, you're only testing that point in time. They could contract it again the next day, but you can do things like that as long as you're doing them with everyone. And then and have everyone tell you what they prefer and what their jobs allow, what portion of their work. You may not know all of the things that they do and how much of that can be done at home. And so let them tell you. It doesn't necessarily just have to be a director for a department. That director can require that each of the employees tell them what proportion of their normal job is comfortable to do at home. And then maybe you stagger people coming in. So if they have work they have to do in the office, that they're there on you schedule them so they're the only person there, or they're on separate ends of the office with other people that are coming in. And they can claim an ADA restriction if they are in the higher risk groups, and that you will have to make accommodations for them. One of the things we did when we said everyone's going to go to telehealth is we had to make sure everybody had a laptop to use at home. We could not require that they use their own personal laptops, and we also, wanted certain software on that, so we had to have everything ready for them to use at home. So that's a reasonable accommodation that you can make to allow, and they don't own the laptop. We check it out to them, they check it back in, they sign something that they're responsible for it if it's lost or stolen, that they are giving us permission to take that from their last paycheck, so that they take good care of it and don't let the children play with it while they're at home and things like that. You want to get them thinking about those issues. The paycheck protection, I think everybody knows the 75-25 can be 100% forgivable. I do have if anyone needs the application for the forgiveness, your bank will have it at major loan, or you can, I also have that. There are going to be changes. The SBA keeps coming out with more changes all the time, and make sure your banker is keeping you up to date on those. But these are some of the more interesting ones. I put in red the ones that I found very helpful to us in our business. Of course, the instructions are going to say what the thresholds are as you fill in the application for the forgiveness, but they are giving you flexibility. We were trying to strategize at our place about what date we were going to cut off the ability for those contractors to claim the admin work and all of that. It was going to fall in the middle of a pay period, but now they have given flexibility so that you can start your 8-week period as of the first pay period you had after receiving that loan. So that lets you then hopefully get that in sync with your payrolls and those kinds of things, which would be helpful. Then you don't have to split your payroll and have 2 different pay periods and that kind of thing. They are going to decide whether you should have applied for EIDL instead of this. And I don't quite know what that means. Maybe Sarah does from Texan. A lot of these actually came from Logan sending out the latest guidance from Texan Bank, because they did our PPP loan and were very helpful. They are going to decide if you should or should not have had one. As we all know, some of the large universities that have huge reserves were applying for those loans, and so they have the government has let them know they should not have and has taken those away from them. The other 2 that were really, I thought, important to us, if you made a good faith written offer to an employee to come back and they refuse to come back to work, that will not count against your decreasing your payroll by 25%. Because remember, it was not going to be forgivable if you dropped your employee census or your payroll by more than 25%, or you have less than, you had more than 25% of the positions that didn't come back. But if you've made a good faith effort in that covered period to get the person back and they refuse, then they won't count that against you. We had someone that actually went on maternity leave during the COVID period, and we had someone that opted to go from payroll to contract position, and they had just made that decision and told us verbally before we got the PPP loan, and then gave us the written notice during PPP. And so that should not count against us, because that was their option as the employee to do that. The application does provide a safe harbor for a borrower who reduced employee levels between February 15th and April 26th, but you restored those positions. And we did that. When COVID first started, we cut our entire workforce by 25%, their hours. We cut everyone's hours across the board to make sure that we would stay in business for everyone. But when we got the PPP loan, we brought everyone back to 100%. So they don't count that against you as long as you bring those people back. I think this is some of the most interesting part. Are we okay to keep going, Julia, or okay? Are we okay to keep going for anyone who can stay? Okay, your mute's on.
That would help. Montana,
Yeah,
any feedback from the chambers end? Are y'all okay to keep this Zoom meeting open?
Yeah, I think we can go, yeah, it's still recording, so I think we can go for a little bit longer. Again, if you need to hop off for another meeting, feel free to do so. But we'll keep attending, and I mean, we'll keep listening in and keep recording it. But probably not too much longer.
Okay.
Yeah, this is getting toward the end, so oops, let me go back. this is just going to cover, do not neglect your mental health as a business owner. This is a lot of stress on us. We are not just worried about our own families, we're worried about all the families of the people that work for us. And please make sure you're practicing self-care during this time. Don't allow critical thinking. Oh, I should have done this. I should have applied for the PPP earlier. I should have looked into EIDL more. I should have, all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. We can should ourselves to death, as they say, and that is nothing. Cognitive behavioral therapy says first come thoughts, then come feelings, then come behaviors. So if you're constantly critical of yourself, then you're going to bring your mood down. You'll get depressed. You'll have anxiety attacks. And then you're not going to want to go to work. You're not going to be fresh to be able to do the things you need to rephase your business in and reopen. So make sure your most important things I can tell you today. Focus on what is possible rather than what is not. And focus on what you can do instead of what you can't, where you're on the obstacles. Of course, you have to consider them, but don't focus on them. A lot of people really could affect their mood in big ways if they would just get in the practice of more positive thinking and focusing on being a glass half full than a glass half empty. I joke with my husband because he's a glass half empty kind of person. I'm a glass half full, and he thinks that I am very, very, what do you call it, Pollyannish, I guess, on decisions, because he says, oh, all you do is present the good stuff on a decision. And I said, well, ask my employees. I can play devil's advocate with the best of them, but all you leave me at home is the upside to think about. You've already covered all the downside, so I don't need to think about that. So just make sure, know yourself and what your tendencies are, and be mindful of catching yourself on those critical behaviors and practicing thought stopping. Replace it with something positive. If you're, a lot of Christians use scripture to replace negative thinking. Just they catch themselves and they replace it with something. Mindfulness, pay attention to what makes you anxious. What are you doing when you're getting anxious? If you're working on deadlines with the television on and New York burning down, then you're putting negative influences in that you don't need to have. Eliminate some of those. If you have to care for yourself in order to care for your staff and to be there for your family. So make sure that you are one of your first priorities. Do things you enjoy. Don't just sit there and work, trying to replenish. You've got to replenish yourself with good sleep and good nutrition. Any of us can become psychotic, literally psychotic, with delusions and hallucinations from lack of sleep. And I'm one that loses time on the computer because I'm ADD. I may work for 5 hours and it seems like maybe 45 minutes to me. And so if you're that kind of person, set alarms for yourself to cut off, get up, walk around, do things that replenish your body and give you, not to mention that for women, and well, for everyone, if you don't stay hydrated and you don't get up and work a lot, you're going to be very prone to clots in your legs. And I've had them. You don't want them, believe me. So it's very, very dangerous. It can kill you. So simple things we can do can keep us healthy. Seek out, and this is something business owners don't do because we're people that like to have all the answers. You need to seek out and allow other people to support you, your friends, your family, a job coach, pastors, friends, anybody that you can get. And if you don't have anyone in your life that you want to confide in, then a counselor is a good person. A lot of times people like to go to a counselor just because they're 100% there for you. They're not there to share, back and forth. You have to have 50% on their complaints and 50% on your complaints. We're there 100% for you, and we can help you bounce things off. And a lot of times people get answers just talking out loud about things. And so make sure that you're supported, because there are people who are suicidal now because their business is at risk. And you can never tell what someone's walking around with, and they can't tell what you're walking around with. People are not just going to smell in the air that you need support and be able to listen to you. You have to tell them and reach out for that kind of thing. For the employee, it's your job to set the expectation for the practices and communicate what you're doing for those practices and to give comfort to them in the workplace that you're taking all possible precautions, get their ideas. The more they feel a part of the solutions, the more they're going to buy into what you're requiring of them. So even if you think you know the whole plan already, you might even start with an open time of what are your ideas for things, and we'll be glad to insert those in what we have constructed so far. That psychological empowerment and giving them say-so over things is huge. They don't feel, remember I said helplessness is one of the most intolerable emotions for people. To give them that empowerment gives them their control back, and it's very, very important to them. So try to involve them. They will worry about permanent job loss. They're going to listen for little things that they read between the lines with you that say maybe their job's not coming back, and they are going to misread a lot of what you say. I am always shocked about what employees actually hear when I ask them to repeat things back. Think about if you're a supervisor, every time you say, come in, I want to ask you about something in my office, though, you know, what did I do wrong? That's the immediate thought. When you're a supervisor, you have inherent power, and they're going to listen for the negative. So make sure you're communicating the positive. It's our intention to bring the whole business back, to bring everyone back, to preserve as many jobs. We're doing everything in our power. We're not going to let it enter into our minds that we're going to have layoffs unless that becomes absolutely clear. And so let them know what you're thinking, and that helps them a great deal with what they're thinking you're thinking, because that's a big deal to them. So I wanted to touch on signs of anxiety and stress in the employee when you're watching. They're going to have flushed faces. If their blood pressure's up, furrowed brows, they'll be like squeezing their forehead or their hands when they're talking a lot. They're going to be short-tempered, having some explosiveness, impulsive. You know what you're doing with your employee, but you don't know that their spouse's income was absolutely necessary for their survival, and their spouse lost their job. You don't know those kinds of things that they're dealing with, or that their elderly parent is dying in an assisted living place and they can't visit. You don't know any of that stuff necessarily. So you're going to have to watch for these signs in employees, the argumentativeness or being very self-critical, crying, anger, they're excitable, they have distrust of you, they are hearing everything negatively, frequent absences or lateness, they have panic attacks, and they may call in sick a lot, be late to meetings, and that would be things that are out of the ordinary. There are those people in the world that are consistently late. If that's their norm, that's their norm. But if they're not somebody who's normally on time, who starts being consistently late, pay attention to that. That's a big sign, because they'll be self-critical. It gets to be a snowball that just keeps going down the hill for them, and they'll run themselves into the ground. Suicidal ideation, the signs of that are fatalistic statements like, you know, it doesn't matter if I go back to work right now, I'm worth more to my family gone than I am here. Those are fatalistic statements that they can act like they're joking. They can even laugh while they're saying that. But if they're making those kind of statements, you pay attention to that, bring them into the office, say you're concerned about them, encourage them to use the EAP, encourage them to call our agency. We have a pay scale for anybody and everybody, people with benefits, without benefits. We have some free services for people that have history of trauma from crime. We'll try to get them the most affordable thing. They give up trying. Let's say there's someone that's normally very, they take a lot of initiative, and you can depend on them. They become undependable. They're not offering ideas anymore. Pay attention to those things. That's someone who is giving up. If they turn from very depressed, this is a big sign in men. If they go from being very depressed and down, very worried, and all of a sudden they're happy-go-lucky and they're relieved and planning, giving things away, ensuring that spouses and all their beneficiaries and with your HR, if they're calling HR and saying, I want to make sure my beneficiaries are correct and stuff like that. Men plan in great detail their suicides. My husband actually sold insurance to a gentleman one time, and he came home and told me, I think he's going to kill himself in 2 years. And I said, why? And he said, because he's willing to pay an extreme rate on his insurance. And he was just diagnosed with a chronic disease, and I think he's going to kill himself over it. And I said, well, did you ask him? He said, well, that's your job, not mine. I said, well, I can't just call a guy up and say, and but people want you to ask. We ask that on everybody that we do an intake on, and we've never had anyone avoid the question. They will tell you outright, yes, I am thinking of that. Yes, I don't see any hope. Now there are men that won't tell you. We had one person that came and he was getting his wife into counseling because he'd been depressed for years. And he said, now that I'm over it, I want to make sure that she gets help for the stress I've caused her. The therapist had a feeling he was depressed and suicidal and was now relieved because he was planning to kill himself, and just getting her with a counselor before he did it. And he refused. He was the only person that in 32 years it has refused. Almost 100% of people will tell you if they're thinking of hurting themselves. You see people buying or borrowing weapons, that's a big sign. Leaving families or leaving their job unexpectedly. Anything that doesn't really comport with success for their future or planning for the future, then that's a big sign. This is the last piece. Paying attention to the work culture. You want to deliberately pay attention to your work culture coming back. People have so many worries outside their job right now, and their minds are elsewhere. You want to reduce the stress as much as possible because stress creates conflict. Restructuring of a business, people not knowing who to report to now, if their supervisor's not on 100% or something, it confuses communication lines, errors happen, and it gets to be like a snowball again, causing stress for everyone. So you want to overly communicate rather than not communicate something. Encourage the employees to lean on other people, just like I just encouraged you to do that. Tell them you understand they have all kinds of stress outside of there. Tell them that you want them to be able to access the EAP. A lot of people don't know they have an EAP. They don't know they have an employee assistance program. They don't know that they have benefits where they can get free counseling. They can do it by telehealth. They think counseling has to be in person. They're not familiar with any of that. To make sure that they know that they need to get support, that if they're having family conflict, that's a sign that they're stressed over and above what their norm is, and they need to get help or get help for a loved one. And most EAP benefits extend to their families as well as your employee. Communicate, I've already talked about that one. Teach them about self-care, signs to watch for in one another. We do those kinds of in-services. If you guys want that for your staff, bring that in on your staff meeting days. We can do that virtually. Train them in not only that, but conflict resolution techniques, communication and conflict resolution. You can prevent a lot just by giving people skills. People are in conflict from lack of skill and lack of will. The skill's easy to resolve. It's the will that's the harder thing. But we also do something by creating team norms where they can restructure how, what does customer service look like during this time? What does teamwork look like in this time when we're all separated? What are our communication practices going to be? And not if, but when we get in conflict with one another as employees, then what are our steps to take to resolve that? And they'll put in a lot of informal stuff before it needs to get to HR and you getting involved as their supervisor. So that's it. That is that, and I'm willing to stay if people have questions or want to discuss anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sharon. That was great.
Sorry.
No, this
Glad
was
y'all could
good.
stay.
I'm glad.
Sorry I
a
didn't
lot
have
of
time to
people-
pause for questions. We did those kind of early on, so.
A
Any
lot of
other?
people were on, so this was great info. Montea, how's the chat looking? Do you want to go over those now, or do you want to send them in an email for wrap up later? What are you thinking?
I'm going to pull these chats from the Zoom meeting, and I will go through all the comments and make sure I pull out the questions, and I can share them, send them to Sharon, and send them in a follow-up email so that we can, all together communicate answers like that, or Sharon can reach out individually as she sees fit. So that's what I'll be doing with the leftover questions.
Okay.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks to everyone. Sharon, you obviously have extensive expertise, and I think we could probably sit down and have an all-day seminar with you. So thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for attending. Stay healthy, stay motivated, stay happy, and if you need help, we're all here for each other in this awesome community. Thanks,
Great.
guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank
All right. Give me a call.
you. Yes, I will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.